Hello, Internet. Mike Byrne here from MMOBomb.com again, bringing you another MMO Thoughts. And this one is one that we kind of need to think about, because at a very surface level, maybe it's the right decision. But as soon as you take a step or two into it, I'm not really sure the right call was made here. So today we're going to be talking about Grinding Gear Games and Path of Exile, who announced that their previously planned for December expansion, currently just called 3.13, is now going to be delayed into January. And okay, delays are, a thing in the industry. So I don't think that news by itself would have been all that shocking, particularly given that some of Path of Exile's previous updates may have needed a bit more QA before they released. I don't think most Path of Exile players would have been all that broken up to hear, hey, we're going to delay the new expansion by a month and do some extra QA. It gives us the ability to not have to crunch, and I think most Path of Exile, reasonable Path of Exile fans would have said that's a good thing, given some of the previous track records with expansions. But that's not the case, at least publicly. In bigger news, you might have seen, if you're not living under a gaming rock, that CD Projekt Red went ahead and delayed Cyberpunk 2077 again. In a statement issued by Adam Badowski and Marcin Iwinski, apologize if I mispronounced those. Hey everyone. Today we've decided to move the release date of Cyberpunk 2077 by 21 days. The new release date is December 10th. Most likely, there are many emotions and questions in your head, so first and foremost, please accept our humble apology. The biggest challenge for us right now is shipping the game on current gen, next gen, and PC at the same time, which requires us to prepare and test 9 versions of it. Xbox One, X, compatibility on Xbox Series S and X, PS4, PS4 Pro, compatibility on PS5, PC, Stadia, all while working from home. Since Cyberpunk 2077 evolved towards being the most next-gen title somewhere along the way, we need to make sure everything works well and everything runs smoothly. We're aware it might seem unrealistic when someone says that 21 days can make any difference in such a massive and complex game, but they really do. Some of you might also be wondering what these words mean in light of us saying we achieved Gold Master some time ago. Passing certification, or going gold, means the game is ready, can be completed, and has all the content in it. But it doesn't mean we stop working on it and raising the quality bar. On the contrary, this is the time where many improvements are being made, which will then be distributed via a Day Zero patch, which we all just frickin' love. This is the time period we undercalculated. We feel we have an amazing game on our hands and are willing to make every decision, even the hardest ones, if it ultimately leads you to getting a video game you'll fall in love with. Okay, we're not going to spend too much time on the Cyberpunk delay. Obviously not a free-to-play game, and at MMO Bomb we cover free-to-play games, but to put a little bit of my thoughts on this one, I'm interested in Cyberpunk 2077. I am by no means like over the top, can't wait. I'm not that level of Cyberpunk fan that, and I'm certainly not sending them death threats and things like that for this delay. That's just absurd. And anybody doing that, just stop. It's a video game, for God's sakes. And CD Projekt Red has been under a bit of fire for crunch periods for their staff and things like that leading to that. So maybe these factored in. Hopefully it'll be able to free up a little more relaxing normal work schedule. I get it. There's being in the business world, there's a difference between overtime and crunch. And yes, I recognize that, but crunch is an unhealthy long-term effect on people. And so, yeah, you should be avoiding that. Occasional overtime is a different story. Again, not the discussion I want to have today, but one certainly worth mentioning, that the health of the Cyberpunk team should be first and foremost, and if this delay helps on that front, great. I'm all for that, particularly since they've been under fire for that in some media pieces lately. That being said, I find their message a bit hollow. None of the challenges you are referencing here are new. You have known for quite some time that you were going to be releasing on all these platforms. You have known and worked with for quite some time now the whole pandemic situation. Not saying that wouldn't delay things, but they did. that already delayed things a few times. And it really is a bad look when people are asking you on Twitter last time, hey, are you for sure this is November is the date? And we promise this is set in stone. And then you would, in fact, have to go back on your own Twitter and say, oops, we done screwed up. So this delay is just a mess. And I don't think it's entirely being exactly honest with the reasons for it. I'm sure 21 days will help, but the challenges you're expressing here are not new challenges that you weren't aware of and haven't been aware of, in some cases, for years now. You didn't just find out 8 months ago that you were going to have to make a PS5 version of this game. That didn't happen, or a Stadia version, or this version, or this version. You willingly took that on quite some time ago, and to say that you undercalculated the amount of time you would need for your day zero patch. Did you actually undercalculate the day zero patch development, or did you undercalculate what you would have done by the time you would need to move to I don't know. Anyway, moving on to the free-to-play portion and what I really want to talk about. In response to that delay, Grinding Gear Games' Chris Wilson took to the forums yesterday, late last night, to, well, not late, but after business hours, right? To announce that Path of Exile's 3.13 launch was going to be delayed until January. And I'm going to read you this statement in full as well, because there's a couple things I think we should take into consideration here. We were previously targeting a launch date of December 11 for our 3.13 endgame expansion. As we discussed last week, our new development methodology gives us confidence that we'd be able to hit this date with a high-quality expansion. Yesterday, CD Projekt Red announced that Cyberpunk 2077 will be releasing on December 10th. We do not want to put our players in a position of having to choose between these two games, so we have decided to step out of the way and delay the release of Path of Exile's 3.13 until January. We still expect to finish 3.13 by early to mid-December. The scope of this expansion will remain unchanged, and during the month of delay before release, we will start work on the 3.14 expansion. So that you still have some interesting Path of Exile stuff to play over the Christmas/New Year break, we're planning to run at least one multi-week event, for example, Flashback. We'll confirm details of these events once we have put together a plan. While this delay will hopefully not affect our development schedule, it will probably cause our release schedule to change a little bit during 2021. We'll post details about this as soon as we have more information about these dates and when we'll be announcing 3.13. In the meantime, let's all get our albino Roa feathers and pray to Kuduku that they don't delay again. Okay, so on a very high-level, surface level, that probably seemed like a good idea. You've got a very high-profile, AAA buy-to-play experience coming. Very, very high-profile. Maybe arguably higher than normal high-profile, coming out in Cyberpunk 2077. It gets delayed into your expansion's launch window. You know what? We'd rather have access to as many of our players as we can, particularly when we sell all the Founders Packs and things like that typically come with a Path of Exile expansion. Let's back out of December and push it till January. On a surface level, I can kind of see maybe why this would be at least a discussion internally. When you start digging into it, though, that's when I start to think this is horrible. This is just a bad decision on Grinding Gear Games' part. And Chris Wilson has spoken to us. We've done interviews with Chris, and Chris always seems like a straightforward, honest guy when it comes to even answering some of our harder questions in interviews, whether that be monetization or items coming up into the game or things that didn't go quite well. So I would never accuse Chris Wilson of being deceptive in this statement. I'll take the statement at face value. But I think as a player, it might read a little bit like, we needed to delay, and this seems like a good reason. Again, I'll take Chris at face value because in my past experience, I've been able to take Chris at face value, so we'll keep with that trend until proven otherwise. But as a player, and in the forum comments, I've already seen it, it does certainly maybe give the impression of they needed more time, and this seems like a good excuse. Because there's a couple flags in the statement. One, there is no date in January given. It just says that they're going to delay it until January, and then they'll circle back and give a release date. So if you were really just trying to get out of the launch window, you should have been then able to provide the date that it was going to come out in January. That should have been part of the planning. Hey, if we're not going to go on December 11th because of Cyberpunk on December 10th, let's go on January 15th. All right, draft a communication so that we can get that out to everybody. There is no date given here. Maybe they wanted a little flexibility, but if the thing's going to be done in time, you don't need that flexibility. Two, how can you realistically sustain that type of business model? What if, I don't know, Cyberpunk were delayed again until January? Are you going to move 313 to February then? What if in January for 313 or down the line in 314 some other big AAA game drops on your release window? Are you going to move it? It just sets this like, we never know now. How big does a game have to be for Path of Exile and Grinding Gear Games to decide they don't want to be part of that release window? Is the new Smash Brothers going to interfere with the Path of Exile? Is this game going to... You just get caught in this. Now your players don't know. If you're willing to do this, how big does a game have to be before we can't depend on your release schedule because some other game might impact it? Another reason that I'm having a hard time with this when I dig into it more, again, surface level, you're like, okay, that makes sense. And then you start digging. Movies do this all the time. Now, it's a little bit of a different ball game there because unlike gaming, movies are vitally dependent on that opening weekend box office take. Like, what did they make that opening weekend? That is a big number for everybody involved in those movies. And while, yes, it's certainly nice in the world of gaming to have that big headline, we've sold X million copies on opening week, here's how we bajillions of digital copies, look, we did it. It's not as important that you make all the money in the opening week that you do, makes it so important on the movie side of things. So, but we also see movies do this months in advance, like 6-7 months. Oh shit, the new Star Wars is coming. We're gonna move up or we're gonna move back our movies launch. You really don't see it in video games. The other side of this is that Path of Exile is a free-to-play game. It's a free-to-play game. And yes, okay, maybe they're going to spend X dollars on Cyberpunk and now maybe not buy your Founders Pack for the expansion, one of your Founders Packs, and that could hurt your revenue. Okay, but now nobody's buying them in December. Nobody, because you moved the expansion to January. It just doesn't seem to make a lot of sense. You're not in the same genre game space. You're not even in the same business model game space. It really doesn't make a lot of sense, and I can understand why it feels like, were you just not ready and this seems like a good excuse? Because here's one big consideration that I have to believe was discussed at the table. What about your players that don't care about Cyberpunk? Granted, maybe there's a good portion of your player base that does care and is going to play that, but there's probably just as big a portion of your player base that didn't care. And now they're asked out of it too. I do see comments on the forum saying, hopefully this will lead to more QA, because you're still saying that it's going to be done early/mid-December. Well, if you were going to release December 11th, you really don't have till mid-December to make sure 313 is done. Maybe this will lead to some more QA, which is definitely a good thing. although players aren't exactly happy at getting flashback and events like that for a couple of weeks. That really is not a good trade-off for most players. But yeah, I don't know how I feel. I'm going to go with this being a terrible decision for my MMO thought, and I'm interested in yours here. And of course, we'll be talking about this on the free-to-play cast tomorrow, twitch.tv/MMOBomb. We do the free-to-play cast live there now every Friday at 1 p.m. Eastern. Of course, we put up the podcast on YouTube for you afterwards. Surface level, I get it. Probably was like, hey, we'd like to be away from that big release. When you take one or two steps into it even, I think this just totally breaks down. This asses out players that didn't care about Cyberpunk. You probably weren't competing directly with them anyway. This just, I don't know. I've given you a bunch of reasons. I just think it's a terrible look. And it sets a precedent that now you're changing your entire release schedule. Not development, but release schedule in 2021. Because of one game that I don't really think, like, if I had to sit there and go, who is Cyberpunk competing with, Path of Exile would not have made that list in a million years, I don't think. Big game, totally different genre, totally different model as far as monetization. And yeah, now you moved any December revenues fully into January in the hopes that by doing so, more people will have money they want to spend than they would have in December. But I think those people would have just bought the pack in January. If you gave them the access now and they said, I can't buy this because I spent $80 on this edition of Cyberpunk, they probably just would have given you the money in January anyway. So I don't know. I think it's a bit of a mess. I think it's a bad call on Grinding Gear Games' part. But that's where you come in. Am I off my rocker, or do you have a different take on it? Let me know how you feel in the comments below, particularly if you are a Path of Exile player that doesn't care about Cyberpunk, or we're a Path of Exile player that absolutely is getting Cyberpunk on day one. And I agree with Chris's sign-off there. God help you if Cyberpunk delays again. Until next time, gang, I'm Mike Barron from MMOBomb.com saying stay safe, and we'll see you on the servers.